Hi, my name is Richard Harbridge. I'm a Microsoft MVP and the CTO of a company called TutorLead, and I wanted to share a very exciting update that is now finally public, which is the announcement of Microsoft Viva Engage as well as Microsoft Viva Storylines.
TutorLead is a remote-first company based out of Canada.
What makes a world-class Microsoft 365 intranet and digital workplace?
Now, Storylines and Viva Engage essentially provide us the ability to connect with employees, with each other, in a way that we haven't been able to before. For reference, a lot of organizations may have been on the fence, not fully leveraging Yammer. We've run into this a lot with smaller organizations that just haven't seen the need for communities as a way to connect outside their working groups, to amplify messaging, to do things of that nature. Now, again, I think those organizations, most of them, when we talk to them and we explain the value of Yammer Q&A and some other things like that, they find that there's uses for Yammer and the communities app by proxy within Microsoft Teams, which is, again, becoming very much the way people are experiencing Yammer. What we're also finding is that this communities experience does have some gaps. As an example, one of the challenges with communities today is it can be daunting to know where to post. Is this the community I should post into? It can be daunting if I'm not an owner of that community. Do I have the right? Should I post here? So you get hesitant with sharing your message or your perspective. Another challenge with communities that we found is not only can they have those challenges, but again, the text-based model of most posts being text-based is a struggle for a lot of people where, something I'm okay at presenting really quickly on a recording on my phone or something like that, but I'm not as confident, within that larger context. And so there's a lot of these sort of things that make it harder for people to share and to connect in a community-oriented environment. It doesn't mean that you can't. It can be very successful, and wonderful people make communities feel inviting and can break down those barriers. But one of the reasons I'm excited about Storylines is it provides a different entry point into expressing yourself and connecting outside of your work group. So you can see an example here of the Storylines experience. Now, if you're using Yammer Communities, which is, it's called Communities, it's an app within Teams, that's going to essentially upgrade to this Viva Engage experience. If you haven't used it, this is a great opportunity to think about using it, particularly for the Storylines experience or for communities. If you really don't know where to get started on communities, think of like a Q&A community for open Q&A within the organization, where you can use the wonderful Q&A rich capabilities that are available out of the box, where you can upvote, you can mark as best answer, you can do those things. And that gives people a place, if they don't know who to ask a question to, to potentially manage and ask those questions. But anyways, let's talk about Storylines, specifically this new feature and why is it so valuable. So Storylines allows us to potentially go and share our own perspectives and thoughts. Now, if you're a leader in the organization, you've probably had this with leadership blogs or some sort of leadership corner where you message and do those things. But as we look forward, this is something that we could enable for all employees. So everyone could have a voice or a perspective, and they could share that. Now, who you follow and who you're defaulted to follow, things like that, those are things that are configurable. And so we could set up things like the ability to make sure that people see their stories from their manager by default and from executives and leaders and things like that. But it's really helpful to know people can connect really with anyone. So if you were at a virtual corporate event, which by the way is something we intentionally need to create, is more of these hybrid and virtual events to help create connection between working groups and people outside of their working groups. So if you think of something like that, maybe you met someone and you really resonated with them, you like their perspectives, or you're looking at from a career perspective, someday you're kind of interested in this area of the business. And so what you could do is you could follow that person and then kind of see their thoughts, their perspectives. Maybe they had a short story bite that was from a meeting where they were sharing some insights from that meeting from a broader perspective. Or maybe somebody else saw that meeting and just thought, this is just so worthwhile sharing. This was so useful, and there was so much great insight around these topics and these concepts within this meeting. And maybe that stirs a sidebar conversation. And the reason these things are very valuable is, again, if you've never used Yammer, you may not have noticed this, but there's this wonderful serendipitous value generation that gets created. What happens is when one person posts about something like a project they were working on or something like that, someone else sees that, says, hey, I'm working on a similar project, especially when they do searches and things of that nature. They say, I'm working on a similar project. Now they actually reach out because now that we both are working on a similar project, I want to learn from you and you want to learn from me. And we essentially generate more value. We reduce silos, we reduce redundancy. There's a lot of benefits from, social and specifically communities, but Storylines actually provides a lot of that without necessarily requiring the same overhead structure that communities do, right? Where you have to have community managers, community health, things of that nature. Now, there's still, of course, governance and some other considerations here, but is generally actually for many organizations we're working with in early access around this, that it's been quite an easy discussion and plan approach to distribute this across the organization, especially with sort of pre-approved people. And so Storylines gives that ability for people to quickly create something. When I do a post, it doesn't have to just be, an image or, a bunch of text or something like that. We can create videos. And even, again, the photos become itself a part of the story, just like people might use in Facebook or other tools today, which is a very common thing people are doing. Now they have the ability to do that internally. So we've also found the adoption journey is relatively easy for most people to adapt to this idea of like, oh, okay, I have a moment, a highlight, a spotlight from something that's been happening. I want to quickly share that image or that recording. And that's really all I need to do. I don't need to do more. It's not a complex or laborious task to share my perspective on things. And because it's more accessible, that increases the amount of visibility and amplification that you get, and most importantly, improves employee connectivity. And there's a number of different things to talk about today, but one of the biggest trends that we're seeing across many customers is that remote and hybrid workers especially don't feel as connected. And it's funny because a lot of organizations are forcing some level of in-person because they're like, that's how you're going to connect. These kinds of experiences are very meaningful and helpful in providing that sort of virtual connection for people across the organization. One that, by the way, isn't just accessible and easy, but that's actually embedded in the places we already work, right? So within Teams, I don't need to go somewhere else. I just am working in Teams and I can see those stories. Or in the Teams app, right? If you're on your mobile phone, being able to consume communities and storylines and things like that within the Viva Engage element of the Viva Team or Microsoft Teams app is a huge win as well. So again, very accessible, really well integrated, a first part of many steps in the journey to kind of take the wonderful capabilities of connection, in amplification, and relationship building and other things that Yammer does so well, and bring it, into a more integrated experience that every employee has access to through Viva. So I'm really excited. I hope you guys are as well. When you yourself get your hands on this, be sure to create your own perspectives and your own storylines. This is one of those ones where when you start to use it, you really see the value of it, and one of those things that transforms a lot of organizations we've been working with. So I'm excited for all of you to get your own hands on this soon, and wonderful to have this in the public sphere so we can talk about it. So with that, again, I really appreciate your time and attention. If you have your own perspectives or questions around storylines, what does it do? What does it not do? How do you tackle X or Y with it? Feel free to ask them. Be happy to hear those questions in whatever medium you prefer. And I would love to know more about that. Bye for now.